called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. That's it. So the present personality who's sitting here today, called you, has created the present personal reality called your life. Yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. So if you wanted to create a new life, a new personal reality, that means you would have to change your personality. Yes or no? Yes. That means then you're going to have to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. Yes or no? Yes. You're going to have to become aware of your unconscious habits and behaviors and modify them. Yes or no? Yes. And then, Spain, you're going to have to look at those emotions that keep you anchored to the past. And you're going to have to decide, do these emotions belong in my future? Yes or no? Yes. So most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. You literally have to become someone else. So there's a principle in neuroscience that says that nerve cells that fire together, wire together. And if you keep thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, demonstrating the same behaviors, creating the same experiences that stamp the same networks of neurons into the same patterns, all for the familiar feeling called you, to reaffirm yourself emotionally in the past. And you do that, I don't know, let's be conservative, 10 years. Would you agree then you begin to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature? And a habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through frequent repetition. And that very finite signature becomes your identity. And as you learned from Brother Bruce yesterday, 95% of who you are by the time you're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, automatic habits, emotional reactions, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function just like a computer program. 95% of who you are is subconsciously programmed. And most people will say, I want health, I want wealth, I want freedom. Or they'll say, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am free. And the body's saying, no, you're not. You're unhappy, you're miserable. And that thought never makes it past the brainstem into the body. So then, new thoughts would have to lead to new choices. Yes or no? Yes. And new choices should lead to new behaviors. Yes or no? Yes. And new behaviors could create new experiences. Yes or no? Yes. And new experiences could produce new emotions. Yes or no? And those new emotions could inspire new thoughts. And that's called evolution. Would you agree? So then if you're not being defined by a vision of the future, you are left with the memories of your past. And your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact of everything you've learned and experienced to this moment. So what do most people do? They wake up in the morning, and the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is they start to think about all their problems. And all those problems are memories that are etched in the brain, that are connected to certain people, certain things, certain objects at certain times and places. And I assert that the moment you start remembering your problems, you're thinking in the past. Yes or no? Come on, Spania. So those memories, every single one of those memories has a feeling or an emotion associated with it. So the moment you start thinking about your problems, the brain starts activating certain circuits, and those memories have certain feelings. And the person starts feeling unhappy, fearful, anxious, frustrated. And those emotions then begin to influence more of those same thoughts. And they turn on the same circuits in their brain to produce the same emotions. And the moment they feel unworthy, the moment they feel unhappy, those emotions begin to influence more of the same thoughts. And people get caught in these loops of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking. In other words, if you think you're a failure, you are going to feel like a failure. Yes or no? Yes. And the more you feel like a failure, the more you're going to think more thoughts equal to being a failure. Yes or no? Yes. Now, thoughts are the language of the brain. And feelings are the language of your body. And how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So most people wake up in the morning and their entire state of being is in the familiar past, and they are going to create a predictable future. And if you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings become the means of thinking, then you are thinking in the past. And if you just told me that you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, then you keep creating more of the same life. Are you with me still? Yes. Come on, Spain. Yes. So then, your body is your unconscious mind. And it doesn't know the difference between an experience in your life that creates an emotion and the emotion that you are creating by thought alone. And when people get stuck in these cycles of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking, and they can't think greater than how they feel, their body is believing it's living in the same past experience, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The body literally believes it's in the past. And the redundancy of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking for years on end conditions the body to become the mind of that emotion. And now the body is literally in the past. And you can't create a new future holding on to the emotions of the past. And people will say to people, why are you so sad? Why are you suffering so much? Why are you so angry? Why are you so frustrated? Why are you so afraid? And people will say, I am this way because of some experience that happened to me 25 years ago. Which means then, that event changed them 25 years ago, and they haven't been able to change since that moment. And the stronger the emotion that you feel from some event in your life, the more altered you feel inside of you. And when you feel that altered inside of you, your brain begins to pay attention to the cause, and it takes a snapshot. And that's called a memory. And people think neurologically within the circuits of their past experiences, and they feel within the boundaries of those emotions. So then, reason this with me. When do most people change? They love to wait for crisis, or trauma, or disease, or diagnosis, or loss. Things have to get so bad that they finally decide to change. Why would you wait to that point to change? You see, you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. Which would you choose? So then, people then who tell the story of their past, they say, that person, my ex-husband, my boss, that person betrayed me 25 years ago. Do you know the latest research in memory says that more than 50% of what you talk about in your past isn't even the truth? That you make stuff up because you don't have the same brain that you did 25 years ago. And it's all to reaffirm the emotion. So then, to change then is to be greater than your body. To be greater than those emotions that you've memorized that keep you connected to the past. And to change is to be greater than those automatic, unconscious programs that are stored in the body as the mind. And when the body becomes the mind now, it means that your past is going to be your future. And then people wake up in the morning, after they remember their problems and feel those emotions, and remind themselves of who they are based on the past. Then they go through a set of routine, automatic behaviors. What does everybody do when they wake up in the morning? Most people do it. You reach over and you grab your cell phone. Then you check your texts. Then you check your WhatsApp. Then you check your Facebook. Then you take a picture of your feet and you post it on Facebook. Then you check one email, then you check the other email, then you check your Instagram. Then you get LinkedIn, then you check the news. And now you're really feeling connected to everything that's known in your life. Yes or no? Then you get up on the same side of the bed. You pet the cat in the same way. You stretch, you put your slippers on. You have the thought of the toilet. And your body follows your mind right to the toilet. Then you go through a series of routine, unconscious behaviors, and you get off the toilet, and then you have the vision of the coffee maker. And your body follows your mind right to the coffee maker. Then you do the unconscious routine behaviors. You have the experience, you taste the coffee, and then you have the thought of the shower. And then your body follows your mind right to the shower. And then you go through your routine ways. You wash yourself, you dry yourself off, and as you're drying yourself off, you have the creative vision of what you're going to wear that day. The next thing you know, you're dressed. Then you sit down and you eat the same food in the same chair, looking in the same direction while you check your emails and watch the TV. Then you get to work, you drive to work the same way. You see the same people that push the same emotional buttons. You do the things that you've memorized and can do so well. Then you stop at the grocery store. You buy the same food. You come home, you sit down, you eat with the same people. You watch the same television shows. Then you get in front of the mirror at night and you put on your lotions, your potions, you brush your teeth in the same direction. And then you get up, you get in bed, and you read one page out of the book, and you fall asleep. Then you wake up the next morning, and here we go again. Would you say then that we could take your yesterday and set it on your tomorrow? And your body is being programmed into a predictable future based on what you did in the past. And most people lose their free will to a program. But there's no unseen hand doing it to them. They're doing it automatically. So then, when crisis happens, when diagnosis happens, when disease happens, when loss happens, people don't feel like themselves. And they're not answering texts anymore. They're not going to dinners. They don't feel like it. They're not doing their emails. They're not making calls anymore. They're starting to look at themselves. They're starting to pay attention to their thoughts. They're starting to look at how they behave because they're no longer feeling like themselves. They can see themselves through the eyes of somebody else. And as they begin to observe those states of mind and body, Now they're no longer the program. They're the consciousness observing that program. In other words, who's doing the observing of the thoughts? That's who you really are when you're not the program. And we begin to objectify our subjective self. And now, you're beginning to change, becoming conscious of those unconscious thoughts, becoming aware of those automatic programs and behaviors, and all of a sudden noticing those feelings. Oh my God, I've been feeling guilt for the last 30 years. But I didn't know it was guilt because it just felt like me. And now the person begins to realize that they've been suffering all along. And if you tell me it was because of that person or that thing in your life that's making you feel that way and making you think that way, I would say then you're the victim to your life because you're allowing something outside of you to control how you think and feel. And then, of course, people then who aren't being defined by a vision of the future, the moment they wake up in the morning and they come back to their senses, and they see the same people and they go to the same places and they do the exact same thing at the exact same time, it's no longer that their personality is creating their personal reality. Their personal reality is creating their personality, and their environment is controlling how they think and feel. Because every person, everything, every object, every place that's known to you in your life is mapped neurologically in your brain. And so then every single experience has a feeling associated with it. And if you're not creating a new future, the moment you come back to your senses, your brain is thinking and feeling equal to everything that you know, you are going to create more of the same. To change, to truly change, is to be greater than your environment, to be greater than the circumstances and conditions in your life. And every great person in history knew this. They had to meet the challenges in their life from a greater level of mind. And they believed in the future more than they believed in their past. People who stop creating, they're just waiting. They're more in love with their past than they are with their future. People who create a new life are more in love with their future than they are the past. They're no longer telling the story of their past. They're telling a new story of their future. Because it's so much easier to lose sight of your vision than to remember it. And to change then is to be greater than time. To live in the present moment. Which means then, if you're not in the present moment, I assert that you're running some program. And we shouldn't take anything personally because everybody's doing it. But when you challenge your brain and body to be in the present moment, you can no longer live in the past and live in the predictable future. And people who live in the past die in the present because they have no awareness of the value of the present moment. Because that means they would have to feel something differently. And the hardest part about change, the hardest part, is not making the same choice as you did the day before. And the moment you decide to make a different choice in your life, I don't care what it is, get ready. Because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty. You're not going to be able to predict the next moment. And if you've conditioned your body to be the mind, the moment you decide to make a different choice, you just stepped into the river of change. And here's the old self, and here's the new self, and you got to cross a river. And the moment you make that new choice, you stepped into the river, and it's going to be the unknown. You are going to leave your guilt behind. You're going to leave your complaining and blaming and making excuses and feeling sorry for yourself behind. You got to leave it behind. But most people would rather be unhappy than take a chance and possibility. In fact, they're happy being unhappy. So then, the moment you step into that river, the body which has been conditioned emotionally to be the mind in its habituations starts sending signals back to the brain, because you say, I'm not going to complain today. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to suffer. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I'm not going to talk about anybody. I'm not going to gossip. I'm going to stop all of that. So all of a sudden now, you're not thinking the same thoughts that are making the same chemicals. And the body says, you've been doing this for 25 years. You're going to stop today? The body's going to say, you think you're the mind? I'm the mind. So the body starts sending signals back to the brain. And the next thing you know, you start to hear voices in your head. You know the voices? Why don't you start tomorrow? It's your mother's fault. It's not going to work. Something's wrong with me. This doesn't feel right. I broke a fingernail. My day's ruined. And if you respond to that thought as if it's true, and you believe it, and you accept it, and surrender to it, that same thought is going to lead to the same choice. The same choice is going to lead to the same behavior. The same behavior is going to create the same experience. And the same experience is going to produce the same emotion. And you're going to say, this feels right. It feels familiar. Going from the old self to the new self is the neurological, the biological, the chemical, hormonal death of the old self. But it begs the question, if you're in that river of change, and people say to me, Dr. Joe, I'm in the river of change and I can't predict my future, I always say the same thing to them. The best way to predict your future is to create it. What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate in one day, one lifetime? And the act of closing your eyes and rehearsing them mentally in your mind begins to install new neurological hardware in your brain to look like that experience has already happened. Now the brain is no longer a record of the past. It's a map to the future. And you are priming your brain into the future. And if you keep doing that over and over again, the hardware will become a software program. And you know what? You'll start acting like a happy person. No mystery there. You installed the circuits. You'll start thinking like a genius. You put those circuits in place. Now here's the tough part. Can you teach your body emotionally what that future will feel like before it's made manifest? That means you can't wait for your wealth to feel abundance and worthiness. You can't wait for your success to feel empowered. You can't wait for your new relationship to feel love. You can't wait for your healing to feel wholeness or gratitude. You can't wait for the mystical experience to feel awe. That's the old model of reality. That's Newtonian physics, cause and effect. Waiting for something out there, outside of us, to change how we feel inside of us. But what if you're not creating? You spend your whole life in lack, in emptiness, in separation, waiting for something to relieve you from your own pain. But the quantum model of reality is about cause and effect, which means the moment you start feeling abundant and worthy, you are generating wealth. The moment you feel empowered, you are stepping towards your success. The moment you're in love with yourself and in love with life, you are going to create an equal. The moment you start feeling whole and gratitude, your healing begins. And the moment you are in awe of life, you are going to have a mystical experience. And there isn't a person in this room that is so special to be excluded from that phenomenon. And you can't tell me now, you can't tell me after all these years, you can't tell me that you're too sick to do this work. You can't tell me that any longer. I have seen sick people with very serious health conditions turn that condition around. You can't tell me you're too old to do this work. You can't tell me that any longer. We have elders in this work. I have mapped their brain, and they are in euphoria. 78-year-old woman comes up to me and says, I think I lost my spiritual virginity today. Go, sister. You can't tell me that you had too much of a turbulent past to change. There are people in our work that have suffered as children in very harsh conditions, and now they are a new person, free from that. You can't tell me that you're too overweight, too underweight, too this, too that. You can't tell me. I've seen it in all shapes, all sizes, all colors. You can't even tell me that you're not ever meditated before. We have people that have never meditated before that have incredible brain scans. Can't tell me that any longer. I now know that we are the creators of our lives. So then reason this with me. You already know how to do this. You already know how to do it. We are wired to be creators. Every single person in this room, at least once, has done something great. And what did you do? You know what happened to you? You had this wild idea, this new vision. You started asking yourself, what would it be like to be happy? What would it like to be healthy? What would it be like to have a new career, a new life? And when you asked that creative question, you turned on the creative center in your brain, called the frontal lobe, the crowning achievement of the human being. 40% of your entire brain right here. This is the creative center. And when you switch on that center center switches on and it has to answer the question, what would it be like to be happy or healthy or wealthy? And the moment it switches on, it looks out over the entire landscape of the brain. It has connections to the entire brain. It's the boss. It's the symphony leader. It's the CEO. And it says, I got to answer the question. Well, let's see what type of circuits I can draw from. And it starts calling up different networks of neurons that are associated to answer that question based on things you've learned, knowledge, intellectual data, and things you've experienced. And as it starts to call up all these different circuits, the moment the brain starts to synchronize and fire in tandem, you get a picture in your mind, and that's called intention. You're selecting a whole new potential in the quantum field. Now, for the passionate person, the moment you have that vision in your mind, the thought in your mind literally becomes the experience. You're in the experience. You're in a future reality in the present moment. And when you begin to experience it in your mind, your brain makes a chemical called an emotion. And you start feeling gratitude. You start feeling inspired. You start feeling optimistic. You start feeling a love for life. And you just combine the clear intention with an elevated emotion. And if thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body, you just moved into a new state of being. And the stronger the emotion that you feel from that inner event, the more you pay attention to the pictures in your mind. And now we could say you are remembering your future. And biologically, it looks exactly the same as remembering your past. Are you with me still? Come on.
Yes.
And if you do that every day, you're going to be in a new state of being. And a new state of being is a new personality. And you did this. And every day, you reminded yourself of that future. And you wrote down the thoughts you were going to think. You reviewed the choices you had to make. You kept that vision alive and you thought about the behaviors you had to demonstrate, the things you had to do. You thought about those goals that were experiences that you wanted. And every time you thought about the next experience, you started producing different emotions. And you kept it alive in your mind, and you did something really brilliantly. You wrote down the thoughts that you weren't going to think. You went into the old self. You lit a match in a dark place, and you wrote them down. I can't. It's too hard. I'll never change. I'll start tomorrow. You wrote them down, and you became so conscious of those unconscious thoughts, you would never let them slip by your awareness unnoticed. And now, the process of change is happening. And you wrote down the choices you had to stop making. You reviewed the habits and behaviors that you had to change. You thought of those experiences you needed to stay away from with certain people at certain times and places. You were just going to separate yourself from those familiar experiences. And you said, what emotions would bring me to a lower denominator that would cause me to no longer see the vision of my future because I would be seeing it through the lens of my past. And you said, I'm not going to let my emotions or my energy drop today. And every day you reminded yourself of who you wanted to be, and every day you reminded yourself of who you no longer wanted to be. And you did it over and over again. It was more important than meals. It was more important than friends at times. It was more important than text and television and football and soap operas and sleep. Just more important than all those things to you. You kept it alive. And all of a sudden, things started to change in your life. And you reached a point where you knew it was going to happen. The moment you knew it was going to happen, you took your foot off the gas. And when it finally showed up in your life, you didn't even care any longer because you felt so amazing. You see, people think it's about their wealth, their health, their new job, their freedom. It's about who you become. And overcoming yourself every day, overcoming means you're going to become someone else. And when that experience happened to you in your life, and you felt the emotions that made you feel more whole and less empty, more joyful and less in lack, you were more kind in your life. You were more present with people. You weren't rushing as much. You weren't as judgmental. You were more giving. You were more caring. You felt more whole. Now think of a time in your life when you had a vision of the future and it didn't happen. What happened then? I'll tell you. You got busy. There just wasn't enough time. You had people to see. You had places to go. You had things to do. You got tired. You had a headache. You had an emotional reaction with somebody. And you stopped. And most people then shrink back into mediocrity. And they find people that are doing the same. And then they use each other to reaffirm their addiction to victimization. And people call that normal. So then here's my question. Can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet?
Yes.
But you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like that event has already occurred?
Yes.
Come on.
Yes. Yes.
Latest research in neuroscience says you can change your brain just by thinking differently. And can you select the new potential in the quantum field? And how many potentials exist there? Infinito? Can you select the new potential in the quantum field and begin to emotionally embrace that future reality before it's made manifest? To such a degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, is believing it's living in that future reality in the present moment, and you are signaling new genes and new ways to change your body to look like the event has already occurred. Is that possible?
Yes.
The latest research in epigenetics is you can change your body by thought alone. So then, think about this. You keep doing that over and over again. You have physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the experience has already occurred. And you're thinking neurologically within new circuits. And you're feeling new emotions. And you're in a new state of being. Would you agree then? If you can maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, something unusual is going to happen in your life. Yes or no? And it's going to come in a way that you least expect. Why?
Same.
Because if you can expect it, it's the known, it's nothing new. It's got to rock your world. It's got to catch you off guard. It has to leave no doubt that what you did inside of you produced an effect outside of you. And the moment you correlate the changes you made inside of you with the effect you produced outside of you, you're going to pay attention to what you did, and you're going to do it again. And now, you'll start to believe, consciously and subconsciously, more that you are the creator of your life instead of the victim of your life. How many people understand? Yes? Yes? So now your brain and body are no longer in the past, they're in the new future, in the present moment. And to live by this law is to live by the quantum law, which says that your environment is an extension of your mind. And when you truly change your mind, your life changes. It's the law. And I've been doing this for a long time now, and I can tell you that nobody changes until they change their energy. And when you change your energy, you change your life. And in the work that we do then, the word meditation literally means to become familiar with. That's what it means. That's the symbolism. So if you're sitting in your meditation and you're becoming familiar with your unconscious thoughts, you're becoming aware of your automatic propensities and habits. You're noticing your feelings and emotions. And you're becoming so conscious of those states that you wouldn't go unconscious every day. That's a meditation. To know thyself and to observe it. And become so conscious of the old self, you wouldn't go unconscious to it again. By the same means, to become familiar with a new self. Firing and wiring the same thoughts. Rehearsing the same behaviors. Firing and wiring until it becomes familiar to you. And conditioning your body emotionally with those elevated, heart-centered emotions. So much so that when you open your eyes, you have the feeling that it's already happened. Then you got to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day. And if you say to me, well, I lost it because of my boss, then I would say you weren't being greater than your environment. The moment you say that was that person that was doing it to me, you're back to the program that you're a victim of your life instead of a creator of your life. Are you with me still? Yeah. Now remember, I said most people, they go to that lower level, and when they're at that lower level, they can see themselves. But every day, if you're being defined by a vision of the future, and you're combining a clear intention with an elevated emotion, and you're in a whole new state of being. Wouldn't you agree then if every day you were from an elevated state of being? You could see the old self from an elevated state instead of a limited state. Yes or no? Yes. So then every day then, you get to choose who you want to be. And if the environment is so strong that it conditions us back to the past, if our bodies have unconscious habits and programs that cause us to go unconscious, and if we are so programmed into a predictable future based on what we did in the past, and no one's in the present moment, wouldn't you agree then it's a good idea then every day before you go unconscious into the routine to close your eyes and disconnect from the environment? Yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. To retreat from your life, all you have to do is close your eyes. And as you close your eyes and you play some music in the background, there's less sensory information coming into your brain. Yes or no? Yes. And then you tell your body, sit, stay, don't, you stay right there. I'm going to feed you when we're done. You can check your texts when we're finished. You can check your emails. You could watch the news. You could lay down. But right now, you're not the mind. I'm the mind. And your body then, your body, which has been conditioned by you, nobody else but you, is going to buck and kick like an unbridled stallion. And it's your job to keep settling it down into the present moment. And it's going to want to get up and go, and you say, come here, get back over here. You keep doing it. And it says, well, listen, it's 7:30 in the morning. I normally get in traffic right around this time, and I start getting really angry and frustrated and judgmental. It's 7:30 in the morning, and you're not going to feel those emotions? Well, let me just think of a past memory so you can feel those emotions. And you become conscious that you're going to the past, and you stop and return back to the present moment. And it wants to get up and do something, and you bring it back. And now you're telling the body it's no longer the mind, that you are the mind. And your will is getting greater than the program. And if you keep doing this over and over again, back to the present moment, I swear to you, there'll come a moment where the body, like an animal, it is the animal, is going to surrender to a greater mind. And when it does, we have measured this thousands of times. In fact, I can predict it now when it's going to happen. I'm looking at a person's brain on a brain scan, and I can say to the scientists that come and watch and study us, watch her. Just watch her. She's going to pop. Just keep watching. She's going to pop. And there's a moment that the brain just goes into this supreme state. And the body, which has been enslaved into the past or the predictable future, finally trusts you. And it relaxes into the present moment, and there's a liberation of energy. You go from particle to wave, from matter to energy, and you free yourself from the chains of those emotions that keep you anchored to the past. And in that moment, you relax into the present moment. The quantum model of reality says all possibilities exist in the eternal now. And now you can see possibilities you've never seen before, because you're no longer viewing your future through the lens of the past. Are you with me still? Yeah. Now, guess what happens? This is weird, because I've seen this enough times. That person is sitting in their meditation. We have their brain hooked up. We have their heart hooked up. We're measuring all kinds of things on them. And all of a sudden, there goes the changes. They start to happen. And in one instant, that person's brain gets highly organized. The front of the brain starts talking to the back of the brain. The right side of the brain starts synchronizing with the left side of the brain. And all of a sudden, those two hemispheres start synchronizing together. And the union of polarity, the union of duality, the union of opposites is called wholeness. And the moment that brain starts resonating in coherence, the heart, that energy moves right up into the heart. And that person starts feeling whole. They're not trying to feel, it's happening to them. And when that heart starts to beat coherently, it begins to produce a measurable magnetic field up to 3 meters wide. And now that person is producing an energy right from here, a different level of consciousness. And that energy is a frequency. And all frequency carries information, and they can lay the thought on that energy of their health, of their wealth, of their freedom, because that energy can carry the thought. Suffering can't carry the thought of wealth. And now they are broadcasting a whole new electromagnetic signature. And what you broadcast into the field is your experiment with destiny. Which means, if you're waking up every morning and thinking about all your problems, and then spending your entire day suffering, you are emanating a very specific signature, yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. What you're saying to the field is, oh, infinite universal mind, giver of life, I am projecting suffering into the field. Bring me an experience of suffering, but bring it in a way that I least expect. That surprises me and leaves no doubt that it's come from you, so I can suffer a little more today. You see, we're not punished for our sins, we are punished by our sins. And sin is an attitude. Are you with me still? Yes. So then, reason then. You can only accept, believe, and surrender to thoughts that are equal to your emotional state. You will never accept, believe, and surrender to any thoughts that are not equal to your emotional state. So then, people can say, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm rich, I'm free. And they're feeling miserable. Mind and body are in opposition. So when we start our meditations, the first thing we do is we activate this center. This is the center of oneness. This is the center of wholeness. This is your connection of divinity, your connection to the field. This is where you no longer have to create matter to matter. Now you're creating energy to matter. And when a person starts feeling gratitude, not because they're getting something, but because they're feeling gratitude because they can. And what is the emotional signature of gratitude? Gratitude means you are receiving something, yes or no? Or you just received something, yes? So the emotional signature of gratitude is it's already happened, yes? So then when you start opening your heart and you start feeling gratitude, you can accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts equal to that state. And you begin to program your autonomic nervous system to become that person. So literally then, I don't answer questions anymore. I don't answer questions because I know that when a person asks me a question, that they can only accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts equal to the emotion they're feeling. And if they're suffering and they're in pain and they ask me a question and I answer them, they argue with me. They ask me the question, now they're arguing with me. Because I know they can't hear it. It's not in their emotional context. But if I say to them, hey, give me 3 days, give me 5 days, come cross the river with me, get beyond yourself. I've looked at 8,500 brain scans in meditation, and I can stand up here and say without a doubt that you and I are at our absolute best when we get beyond ourselves. Period. That's it. Cross the river with me. Come on, get beyond yourself. Don't you know that the moment they have their own personal breakthrough, They have the answers to their own questions. They overcome the emotions that keep them anchored to the past. And the memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom. And now they bless their past because they have the wisdom from it and they're no longer enslaved by it. And I swear to you, I swear to you, that when that experience finds you, if you are truly in the creative state, and it comes in a way that you haven't thought of the unknown, the brain learns by mistakes and surprises. Which would you like a few of? Surprises? When that event finds you, and it comes out of nowhere, I swear to you, you will look back at your entire past, and you will say, I don't want to change anything in my past because it brought me to this moment. And that is the moment the past no longer exists. And would you agree then? What feeling would you have when it finally happens?
Freedom.
Joy, freedom, enthusiasm, and theos filled with God? What would you feel? You'd feel elevated, awe, wonder, yes? Yes. And that's a new energy, yes? Yes. And wouldn't you agree then, the moment you feel that, you're going to use that energy to create the next experience, yes or no? Yes. And then you're going to keep challenging yourself to the next experience. Yes. So then, I'm so proud of our community because they're doers. I don't do much of this any longer. I don't do keynotes. I don't do conferences. It's dinner conversation to me. I want to be with doers. I don't want to talk about history. I want to make history. And if you get a community of people together that are passionate about the unknown, that want to overcome themselves, that want to connect to that divine intelligence and create from that state, just like an infection spreads amongst the community and creates disease, health and wellness become as infectious as disease. And I have witnessed it so many times now. I am waking up in my dream. We do these week-long events. And I can tell you that I have witnessed people standing on the stage, not once, not twice, not 3 times. They come up and they tell the story of how they reversed stage 4 cancer. Then the next one comes up, how they reversed stage 4 cancer. And they don't look like a movie star. They're not all young. They're not all dressed well. They're not all buffed. They just look like a normal person. And the story isn't glamorous. Some of them were pronounced dead 3 times. The doctor said, you're going to die. But they didn't accept, believe, and surrender to that thought without any analysis. And let me ask you a question. You think there were days that they had a lot of fear because the doctor told them they were going to die? Come on. Yes. And they had a reason to not do their meditation because the fear gripped them. But guess what? They did their meditation anyway. And they overcame a little bit more of their fear. And do you think there were days that they had doubt that they could do it? Yes? And they could have just given up. But guess what? They didn't. They did it anyway, and they overcame their doubt a little bit more. And you think there were days that they felt so physically bad, their body felt so bad, that they didn't think they could do their meditation? But guess what? They did it anyway. They did it anyway, and they overcame their body a little bit more. And you think there were days they were too busy because they had to take care of their children and appointments. They could have excused themselves if there wasn't enough time, but guess what? They did it anyway. They got up earlier and they never missed a day, and they understood what they were doing. And they overcame and they overcame and they overcame until they became someone else. And some of them lost everything. They were bankrupt, they had no friends, they lost their home, they lost everything. You know what they said? I'm not getting up from this meditation until I'm in love with life. Now, to the materialist, there's no reason to be in love with life. But to the quantum mind, They weren't going to get up until they felt that emotion and they understood the science behind it. In other words, science is the contemporary language of mysticism. It is science that demystifies the mystical. And you combine a little quantum physics with a little neuroscience, with a little neuroendocrinology, with a little psychoneuroimmunology, little epigenetics. All of those sciences point the finger at possibility. And they understood what they were doing and why. And nothing was left to conjecture, superstition, dogma, spiritual mumbo-jumbo. They understood that science creates community, and they could explain what they were doing. And if it's the environment that signals the gene, hello, you learned that yesterday, did you not? Poke the person next to you, please. Poke them. If it's the environment that signals the gene, and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, they were signaling genes ahead of the environment. And genes are responsible for the structure and function of your body. Genes make proteins. And the expressions of proteins is the expression of life. And they were turning down those genes of disease, and they were upregulating genes for health. And they were knocking on the genetic door every day. Every day. And you know what? You'll say to them, what about your past? What about your father who was an alcoholic that beat you every day? You know what they'll tell you when the disease is gone? That was my greatest lesson. I'm free. I forgive my father. I have no charge. I'm on to a new life. And you'll say to them, where did the disease go? Did you visualize the tumor shrinking? No. I just became somebody else. The disease exists in the old personality. It doesn't exist in this new personality. I'm somebody else. Born again in the same life. And so then, they stand on the stage, and I stand behind them, and they're telling their story, and I'm looking out at an audience of 1,000 people, and I'm watching tears roll down their face, because they are talking possibility to people. You can't tell me that when you witness a miracle like that, you can go back to being the same person. It's evidence. And not only is it in the field now, but you're witnessing it in three-dimensional reality. And evidence then says it's possible for you. And this is a great time to be alive, because just like the 4-minute mile, once the 4-minute mile was broken, what happened? Everybody started doing it, yes or no? We get emails every single week. Many of them, sometimes every day. Another person, 50 brain tumors in his brain, 9 in his brainstem, 20 seizures a day. The doctor said he would never live. I just saw his brain scan. All 49 out of the 50 tumors are gone. He's got one small one left and it's benign. All his brainstem gone. No more seizures. You know what the doctor said to him? Now I remember why I got into medicine, because of you. He said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. He said, oh, well, all I did was downregulate certain genes and upregulate other genes, and I was wearing my destiny. What? So then you have no idea what you're doing today in choosing yourself, who you're going to influence in some future time. Yes or no? And if you understand the scientific model, and I can tell you now that I am absolutely clear that if you give people sound scientific information, and they learn that information, and it's the language, if I then say, turn to the person next to you and explain what I said, and you're in a workshop, and you turn to your partner and you begin to explain that model of understanding, you're beginning to assemble new circuits, yes or no? Yes. And you're causing your brain to fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind. Because mind is the brain in action. So then, as you remind yourself of what you're learning, you're installing the neurological hardware in your brain in preparation for the experience. And the more you understand what you're doing and why, the how gets easier. Which means then, if you can't explain it, it's not wired in your brain. That means you'll have less meaning and assign less intention behind what you're doing. And then, if a person can explain that model and install the circuits in their brain, now they're ready for the experience. And if I can set up the conditions in the environment and give people the proper instruction, when they get their behaviors to match their intentions and their actions equal to the thoughts, they have a new inward experience. And they begin to transform themselves. And if we keep going a little further, and a little further, and a little further, all of a sudden, people are ready to create. And they begin to create the lives that they want. And they feel so whole. They feel so happy. They feel so satisfied. They no longer want anything because they feel like they already have it. Are you with me still? Yes. Which means then, the moment you get up from your meditation and you're feeling wholeness and joy, and then you get in traffic or you get at work and you start getting angry, you just disconnected from the energy of your future and you're back to the energy of your past. Don't expect anything to change. And if you tell me it's that person's fault, I'd say, oh my God, you're back to the program that you're a victim. Are you with me still? Yes. Now, the biggest reason people give up on their dreams is because of the hormones of stress. And stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of homeostasis, knocked out of balance. The stress response is what your body innately does to return itself back to order. And so all organisms in nature can tolerate short-term stress. A deer gets chased by a pack of coyotes. The moment the deer sees the pack, it turns on a very primitive nervous system called the fight-or-flight nervous system. And now the deer is mobilizing all of its energy and resources to run from those predators. And if the deer outruns the coyotes, and the threat is over, 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, the body returns back to balance and starts grazing again. Are you with me still? Yes. Now, when you and I perceive a threat in our environment, we turn on the same primitive nervous system. And we begin to mobilize all this energy for some threat or danger in our outer world. Now think about this. The moment you begin to create that rush of chemistry, there's an arousal that goes on in the brain and body, an arousal of energy. And people become addicted to that rush of energy. And the emotions of anger, frustration, hostility, prejudice, competition, fear, anxiety, pain, suffering, guilt, were all created by the hormones of stress. And psychology calls those normal human states of consciousness. They are altered states of consciousness. And that arousal of energy gives the brain and body that rush. And people become addicted to those emotions. And they use the problems and the conditions in their life to reaffirm their addiction to those emotions. They need the bad job. They need to watch the news. They need the bad relationship because it makes them feel something. You know what that means? It means that people become addicted to the life they don't even like. Now, because of the human neocortex, the size of the frontal lobe, we can think about our problems. And we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. And if those chemicals are addictive, then people become addicted to their own thoughts. And that's why it's so hard to change. Now, it's a scientific fact that if you keep the stress response going over and over again for a long term, that the long-term effects of the hormones of stress downregulate genes and create disease. And if you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, that means that your thoughts can make you sick And if your thoughts could make you sick, is it possible then your thoughts could make you well? Yes. Hello? Yes. We took 120 people. We did brain scans on every one of them. We had them wear heart rate monitors. We had them change their emotional state in 4 days and give up the emotions of fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, guilt, and shame, and trade them for an elevated emotion like gratitude. We had the measurements. We're measuring to see if they were doing it. 10 minutes a day, a few times a day for 4 days. We measured their cortisol levels, their stress hormones, and a chemical called immunoglobulin A. Immunoglobulin A is the primary defense in your body against bacteria, viruses, and fungus. It's better than any flu shot. It's better than any flu shot. It's better than any flu shot. I thought I'd reprogram it. It's the body's natural defense system. And when its cortisol levels go up, and you're mobilizing all this energy for some threat in your outer world, there's no energy in your inner world for growth and repair. So the immune system suppresses, it dials down as stress hormones go up. It's not a time to repair, it's a time for emergency. So we treated those emotions. We measured cortisol and IgA. At the end of 4 days, cortisol levels dropped about 20%, and IgA levels increased by 50%, stimulating their immune system just by changing their emotional state. So the worst thing that could happen to you by giving thanks is you'll begin to heal. So then, when you're living by the hormones of stress, you are drawing from this invisible field of vital energy surrounding your body, and you're turning it into chemistry, and the field around your body begins to shrink. And now you become more matter and less energy, more particle and less wave. And the very hormones of stress heighten our senses. They cause us to pay attention to the outer world where the danger is, and we narrow our focus on the danger. Causes us to feel the rush of energy, and we have to take care of our body. Our body's in danger, so we become selfish. And when we're living by stress, we're thinking about time. And if you were being chased by T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex, you'd be looking in your environment where you need to go. You'd be using 100% of your resources to get there. You would be, I got to take care of my body, and I only got a certain amount of time to do it. The body, the environment, and time. And when you live by the hormones of stress, and all of your attention is on your body, all of your attention is on your environment, and all of your attention is on time, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And now you are living in three-dimensional reality, and you got to play by the rules of Newtonian physics, which means then, if you're in the process trying to create a new future, the very hormones of stress cause you to feel like a body locked in space and time. And your dreams, you get them, but it's going to take you a long time to get them. You'll get that new house, but it's going to take you 30 years to pay it off. You're going to get the new relationship, but you have to go on Match.com and look at all the body parts and figure out who you want to be with. You want a new job, you got to do your CV and get your resume and all that. You have to pay for the house and the new job. So you got to go back and forth to work all day long. And the more we live by the hormones of stress, the more we believe we're somebody, that we're someone. We have some things, we live somewhere and in some time. And now, when the hormones of stress are activated, and you're shifting your attention to one person, to another problem, to another thing, to another place, you have circuits in your brain that are assigned to all those nodes. And the hormones of stress, when the brain is aroused, activate all these circuits, and the brain all of a sudden starts to fire very incoherently. We've measured this, and when the brain is incoherent, you're incoherent. When the brain isn't working right, you're not working right. And when you're feeling frustration or impatience or resentment, your heart literally beats out of rhythm and becomes incoherent. Now the heart and the brain are out of sync. And people that live by the hormones of stress, out of the infinite potentials in the quantum field, they will select the worst case scenario in their mind. Because in stress, In survival, if you prepare for the worst, anything less that happens, you have a better chance of surviving. So people spend their whole life anticipating the worst thing that could happen to them. Are you with me still? Yes. And they narrow their focus on matter. They are narrowing their focus on objects and things. And the more they live by stress, the less they want to create.
Okay.
Because in emergency, it's not a time to create. It's time to run, to fight, and to hide. And yet, our research shows there's a formula. And it's a simple formula. And if you teach people this formula, they will begin to make measurable changes in their brain and heart. You teach a person how to take their attention off their body and become nobody. Take their attention off the people in their life. Now think about this. The stronger the emotion you have, the more you pay attention to what's causing it. Yes or no? Yes. And if where you place your attention is where you place your energy, you're giving your power away to that person. And I can tell you that the moment the person decides to take their attention off the person in their life, and they overcome that emotion they're associating with it, they're breaking their energetic bonds from their past, present reality, and they are calling energy back to them. And that's available energy they're going to use to create a new future. They take their attention off their cell phone, their computer, off their car, and they go from something to nothing. They take their attention off the place they're sitting, the place they need to be, and they go from somewhere to nowhere. And they're not thinking about the predictable future or the familiar past. They settle into the present moment, and they go from some time to no time. And the moment you become nobody, no one, no thing, no where, and no time, and you take your attention off of everything material, listen to this, and you focus on nothing. If you go from a narrow focus to a broad, open focus, when you're sensing that field, that quantum field, and you're no longer associating with your body, and you are disinvesting your attention and energy out of this three-dimensional reality, the only thing you become in that moment is pure consciousness. And here's that divine intelligence within you. It is always present. And people spend their whole life as somebody, being someone, owning something, living somewhere in some time. This is the identity that's connected to three-dimensional reality. And the moment they become nobody, no one, no thing, no where, and no time, they fall into the present moment, and they become pure consciousness. And if I ask them to begin as pure consciousness to connect to that field, and I give them a roadmap, and they begin to pay attention to it and stay present with it. Where you place your attention is where you place your... You start moving closer and closer to it, and you start experiencing less separation and more oneness and wholeness. And all of a sudden, if you connect to that intelligence, that quantum field, you become the consciousness of everybody, of everyone, of everything, of everywhere and every time. And we can actually predict that moment where that person's consciousness merges with a greater consciousness. And when they come back to their senses, they take a piece of it with them. And they become more loving. It is a loving intelligence. They become more giving. It's a giver of life. They become more conscious. It's a consciousness. They become more mindful. It has an infinite mind. They become more willful. It has an amazing will. Its nature becomes their nature. Its mind becomes their mind. And it's not like they have to try to forgive. They feel so whole. We've measured their neurotransmitters. Oxytocin levels 200 times normal. They're feeling so much love, not because of a person or a thing, it's coming from within them. There's a crack, and that divine intelligence is leaking out of them. They feel so whole, they feel so amazing, it's impossible for them to hold a grudge. They would never give this feeling up because of anybody or anything. And I call that the natural state of being. And going from survival to creation requires then that you master your body. You master the conditions in your environment, and you find the sweet spot of the generous present moment. And every day, retreating from your life and making time for yourself. When you invest in yourself, you invest in your future. When you believe in yourself, you're believing in possibilities. And when you believe in possibilities, you believe in yourself. That if you were to carve out a little time every day to be the creator of your life, to try it out like an experiment, to see the effects that you would cause, to see that when you change your mind and your body and change your energy, what kind of changes you bring in your life. And to study this material and to wire it in your brain so that every single challenge in your life is met from a greater level of mind, I promise you, the side effect of these efforts is a new life. The side effect of these efforts is a change somewhere in your body. The side effect of these efforts is you feel more whole and more connected. And what a great time to be alive. Because this is not the time for the philosopher. This is the time for the master. And I could stand up here till this evening and tell you story after story of people that have done the uncommon. And they look just like you. Making time for yourself every single day to be defined by a vision of the future instead of a memory of the past means you're believing in your future more than you're believing in your past. And removing those blocks, those masks, those things that stop the flow of the divine in us, that's the work. And when that intelligence begins to make its way through you, you will be less seduced by the outer world. You won't be relying on anyone or anything to make you happy any longer. It will come from within you. And you know when you're changing in your life? When you stop talking about it. Because you're too busy being it. And when you start demonstrating greatness in your life, you give people permission to do the same. And they'll notice all of a sudden something's different about you. You're unpredictable. You're smiling more. They're thinking, he changed his medications, that's what it was. She got some work done, that's what it is. Imagine, though, leading by example, giving permission for people to do the same. The only way we're going to change this world is to change ourselves. Thank you for that.